We don't always love talking about Canadian teams because we're Leafs fans and whatever. There's a rivalry there, but we have to give thanks to the Calgary Flames for keeping us entertained this entire offseason. Tkachuk trades, Gaudreau leaving, and now they finally scooped up Naz, who was on the market for literally, over a month. And I'm surprised it took this long, but he's found a home.
I'm surprised he went to Calgary, to be honest. I thought he was going to end up a New York Islander.
I thought he was going to stay in Colorado the whole time. I thought they were just going to, they were just trying to make room for him. That's why he was sitting around. But I don't know. This one came out of the blue.
I agreed, and then I heard that Nathan MacKinnon wants to be the highest paid player at like $14.5 million next year, right? And I think immediately Joe Sakic had a meeting with Nazem Kadri and said, "Yeah, you're probably not signing back." Yeah.
Didn't MacKinnon say he was going to take a discount?
You don't think $13.5 million for Nathan MacKinnon over 8 years is a discount?
It is.
Yeah,
but that's not what I thought of when I heard discount come out of his mouth.
You were thinking like single digit payments.
No, I was thinking like 10.5, 11, even 12 will still be a discount. But if he wants, he deserves to get paid. But that's not what I thought of when I heard discount.
Yeah, either way, Nazem Kadri is no longer a Colorado Avalanche. He is a Calgary Flame. What are your initial thoughts about the signing?
I think we called this one, actually. I'm going to give ourselves some props here because we kind of figured after those two left, Tkachuk and Gaudreau, that this team was kind of upset. They not that they made this purely an emotional decision, but they had money to play with as well. And he was still out there, so it's like, how could you not at least try and get him? And they did. So I think from that perspective, it kind of makes sense, but we did call it. So let's give ourselves some props.
Do you think 7x7 is a lot of money? The way that I think about it is first part's about the deal. I thought originally it was an overpay, and then I remembered you talked about something last episode where you said the Calgary Flames have about a 3 to 4 year window to win the cup. And I think over the first 3 years in that window, paying $7 million for Nazem Kadri is probably a pretty good deal. And then it gets really bad after that, but that's kind of on track with how their contract signings have been so far.
Exactly. Yeah, they have two. It's not even 3 or 4. I think from the contracts that they kind of have running right now, it's 2. They have this and the next before half of their core comes up, and they're not going to be able to keep them all, of course. So for 2 years, paying Kadri $7 million is I think a bargain. On at least if he is somewhat close to what he was last year. If he's 90% of Kadri last year, that's a $7 million player all day.
For sure.
And I think even if he tails off to, let's say, 60, 70 points, maybe where people expect him to be, I think he brings other things that will allow him to succeed there. He'll probably still be on the second line, right, which is exactly where he thrived in Colorado. I think honestly it's going to be okay for those first 2 years when they're really trying to compete, and then after that, it's going to be terrible. But they signed him for these 2 years.
What contract do you think ages more poorly, the Huberdeau one or the Kadri one?
Man, that's tough. They're both going to age really poorly.
I think Nazem Kadri's right. 31, and he's going to end off at 7x7, so he's going to be 38. And Huberdeau
is Huberdeau going to be by the time the season starts.
Yeah, and what's Huberdeau going to be? Almost 39. He's going to be 30. He's going to be 38 by the time the deal ends.
They're both going to end the same time.
I think both of them are going to end a lot poorer. Very poor. I probably think the Huberdeau one towards the tail end of it's going to be pretty bad, especially because he's so bad defensively. Like we've talked about, that once that offense dries up and the defensive capabilities are no longer accepted because he can't put up 100 anymore. At least Nazem Kadri is within the middle half of the league in terms of defensive metrics, which I do think will be increased under the Sutter system, right?
Yeah,
they always do. But when I look at Nazem Kadri, man, he's honestly the perfect second line center on a contending team. Like he fits that second line center bill. And honestly, like you said, a second line center on a cup contending team probably makes around $7 million. We saw that with Vincent Trocheck, what he just signed, compared to other second line centers on cup contending teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a pretty good AAV and term. The guy does everything well. He's in the 80th percentile of offensive metrics. Like I said, he's just above the 50th percentile defensively. He is phenomenal on the power play, within the top 10%. However, I wonder how much that has to do with the fact that probably 3 of the top 15 players in the league are on that first line power play, or were on it last year.
Yeah. Definitely got some help being part of that team, but you mentioned it a lot too, that he didn't really play with any the big boys at even strength.
At even strength,
right?
for sure. And that's why his when we look at whether we think he's going to repeat what he did last year, I think there's a case for both ways, and the case in favor of it is the fact that at 5-on-5, he's probably going to have better teammates than he did last year, and if he puts up, probably have an opportunity to put up more points.
I think so, and honestly, he doesn't need to be the primary point scorer on that team. I mean, of course, they're going to rely on him to chip in, but if he's playing second line and you have big boys on the first line, they're going to be relied upon to score goals. He's probably going to be relied upon to shut guys down, which we know he does quite well.
Yeah, he is good about it. But here's the question now, because as soon as Nazem Kadri signed, every single analytics page on NHL Instagram and NHL TikTok brought up the question, will Nazem Kadri do what he did last year? I want to ask you that question. Like, do you think that there is going to be a huge fall off? Do you think there's going to be a minor fall off? Will he repeat what he did last year? What are your thoughts?
I think it's going to be a lot to ask him to get almost 100 points again. Like, that's just unrealistic. I don't think he's going to have a massive fall off. I think you can expect some regression. If he gets 70 to 80 points, I think you take that. If he can hover around a point a game, I think that's pretty acceptable. If he's a little bit lower but still has an overall good season, putting up good defensive numbers and fitting into that team well, I think they're gonna. I think he's going to be okay this season, and it might not be reflected purely in points, but I think he's going to fit well.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, even if he falls off slightly, and fall off might be the poor word, probably regression to the mean is probably a better word. If Nazem Kadri puts up 70 points in 82 games, that's a win at $7 million, like you said. So. Last year he had, and this is all from Data Driven Hockey, he had 87 points in 71 games, and his previous best was 61 in 82.
It's a big gap.
It was a big gap, and when we compare his stats that Data Driven Hockey brought up, they compared last season's stats to, I think, an average of the past 3 seasons before.
Okay.
I mean, at 5-on-5, he's relatively the same as he's been in the past 3 seasons. His points per 60 is the only thing that's changed, obviously, because he was doing so much better. 5-on-5, he's up at about 3.99 points per 60 games. His individual points percentage is around the same, but on the power play is where it gets a lot different. Last season, the dude had a humongous jump on the power play. His individual point percentages, his shooting percentages, his everything is just exacerbated so much higher on the power play. And then when I thought to myself, okay, now that he's on a different team, are these power play metrics going to fall off? But then you look at the first line power play on Calgary, and it's arguably just as good.
It's not terrible.
Yeah, who would their 5 guys be? It would probably be Kadri. It would definitely be Huberdeau. They put Anderson on the first line as well.
Lindholm will be there.
Lindholm as well. Toffoli, or maybe even Mangiapane, considering the year that he had last year. That's probably not as good.
It's not.
As the Avalanche, but even he puts up 3/4 of what he did last year on the power play. That's still on pace for 70 points, and that $7 million is now a bargain deal.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a huge issue. People might clown him because he drops off, but that's just people wanting to clown him anyway. I think he's gonna have a fine season. I think he's gonna fit in fine. I think that's a Daryl Sutter kind of player too. I think they're gonna have a pretty good relationship. I wonder if that was part of the reason why he went there too, over maybe some of the other teams like the Isles you talked about. Mm-hmm. I know Lou signed him to his contract, but maybe he just thought the fit in Calgary would be better just based on his play style, based on the coach. I could see that being a big factor for him if all else was equal, if money was the same.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that he wanted to be on a winning team. That was probably the most important thing, because all else equal, I would rather play in New York than in Calgary,
would
right? You really would
I don't
choose?
know. I guess I guess if all else is equal, it's hard to say no to New York. But it's not like New York. It's budget New York.
I guess it's fake New York. But
yeah,
I guess when we think about why Kadri signed to Calgary, once again, this is just all conjecture. Like you said, the fit with Daryl Sutter is probably perfect. Kadri is just a playoff type guy. He's that dude. He rises up to the challenge, and we saw that very well with that great game that he had against St. Louis. I think it was Game 6 when he put up that hat trick after dealing with all of those terrible comments that were coming to him. He comes in, scores a hat trick, scores the game winner. After all that stuff that happened with Binnington too. He looks like a different player, and I mean, obviously that isn't a secret. He's put up his career highs this year compared to last year, but he just looks like he's on a mission. He's looking like he's trying to prove everybody wrong, and he did that this year. And I wonder if he comes out trying to prove everyone wrong again, because all these basically everyone on NHL Instagram, including myself, thinks that there's going to be a fall off next year.
I think he will. He some guys just enjoy having chips on their shoulders. Some people don't like being hated on or being doubted, and they thrive when they're maybe more empowered. But he seems like a guy who thrives when there's people who think he's gonna fail, or who maybe even want him to fail, because there definitely were people who wanted him to fail last year. And he just he uses that as even more motivation. I mean, that's a pretty good quality to have. If you can like use that, like, everyone's gonna get hate as a hockey player, but if you can somehow channel that to like make you better, I don't know what I would do for that skill. That's a pretty valuable skill.
For sure. And I think he's going to do a lot to help Calgary try and win a cup. It's very weird to say because this offseason for Calgary has been confusing to say the least. Like the Calgary Flames lost their two best players. They clearly didn't want to sign back. They make these really weird blockbuster trades for Jonathan Huberdeau. Nobody thought this was coming. I think if Jonathan Huberdeau doesn't sign, Nazem Kadri doesn't sign, Treliving does a really good job of stopping this team of going into shambles. But it just seems like the Calgary Flames have a better chance of winning the cup now compared to last year, but simultaneously got older and more expensive. And like over the long term, they probably got worse.
Yeah, I don't. This is a tough one. I don't think they got better's maybe. They're different. They're different for sure. They got stronger up the middle, which is important. I think you talked about it. Either it was on the TikTok that you made, or we talked about it at one point. Up the middle, that wasn't their strength. Definitely got stronger up the middle. It's gonna help them in the short term. I don't know if they got better though. I don't know how you lose Tkachuk and Gaudreau and get better.
That's fair. The reason why I think got better is because, well, they lost two players. They got three really good ones back, and I think
that's right. Uyghur, I forgot about Uyghur actually.
Right, in absolute value, I mean, in a non-salary cap era, you could probably make the argument that Kadri, Huberdeau, and Uyghur just this year might be slightly better than Tkachuk, Gaudreau. But the problem is that in a hard cap, the answer is definitely no. And over the longer term, of course, you take two young stars in Gaudreau and Tkachuk. You said it best. Like now that I think about it, the Calgary Flames have 3 to 4 years of unbelievable good odds to win the championship, and if they don't, these contracts are going to age so poorly.
And it won't matter because it'll matter to the fans and to the organization, but to Treliving, he won't care because if they win, well, they won.
100% sure.
Then he's gone.
The great thing about this signing too is that they're simultaneously better, and simultaneously they also made the team that they had to compete against most last year worse. Like the Colorado Avalanche are objectively worse than they were last year. Yeah. Right? Losing Burakovsky, losing Kadri, losing Kemper, although they did sign Georgiev. But, I mean, they did get worse, but they're so nasty. Unbelievable. But maybe the word now is that they're beatable. It seemed like last year that they were kind of unbeatable in that playoffs.
Too deep.
Right? And now the question is can Calgary win a cup? And I think the answer to that question is yes. Like on paper, in the Western Conference, who's better than them objectively? Colorado, I mean, Edmonton did kind of put them in their place this postseason. Like that could have been a blip. I think it might have been. They were missing Tanev. They're gonna have Uyghur, assuming a healthy Tanev as well. If we get another Battle of Alberta, we'll be absolutely loving that because it's just great hockey. I think Edmonton's gonna be really strong again this year, but I would say maybe those three, maybe St. Louis. I don't think Minnesota's gonna be good this year. So of those four, it's a real good chance for them. And I guess Vegas, too, if you want to throw them in there. You like Vegas. I think they're going to be poo this year. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about them in a little bit, though. Okay, fine. Let's keep going. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But can we just quickly talk about the trade they had to make to clear up the cap space? Oh, with Sean Monahan. Yeah, and a first. What did you think? I really don't want to make this about the Leafs, but I want to make it about the Leafs. Okay. Can I do that? Sure. Okay. Indulge yourself. When Kyle Dubas had to get rid of a first to get rid of Marlowe's contract, do you remember all the blowback he got? Like, oh, why is he trading away first? He doesn't know how to manage his cap, blah, 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 blah. First of all, he didn't sign that contract. Lou signed it, and it was terrible. From the outset, yeah. Yeah, it was bad. He was okay for the first couple of years, but everyone knew that was going to suck. And then he got blown up for that. Treliving makes the exact same trade for a guy who's younger and for a contract that he signed, and I haven't heard anyone criticize him yet. I mean, that makes perfect sense, but the answer to that question is because people love clowning the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? It also blows my mind how they needed to give up a first to get rid of this deal. Like, they couldn't have gone to Arizona and said, here's a second and a third, take it. Arizona collects bad contracts like candy on Halloween. I don't know wwhy they had to go to the Montreal Canadiens and say, here's a first for Sean Monahan. I mean, who obviously is not worth the, $7 million that he's being paid? 6 point something. But he's also still an NHL player. Yeah, if he's healthy, he can play. He's just not at that level. Yeah, I don't understand why they had to give up a first. Like, that was the thing that mind boggled me. Because you're right. Because Marlowe retired. Well, he fake retired after that. He didn't play a game for them. But yeah, Monahan can still
play hockey. Like, and the Arizona Coyotes they need guys who can play. I'm actually, that's a really good point that you made. I don't know why maybe they just had zero leverage. I don't know what the thing was, but
I don't even know if it's zero leverage. I honestly, like, I thought back about it when I saw this deal originally happen. I'm like, okay, they cleared up some cap space clearly because they wanted to go out and get Nazem Kadri. But the fact that you had to give up a first round pick, I mean, granted, it is in 2025, so that if like Calgary is going to be good, that's probably going to be a glorified second. But at the end of the day, fair. A first is a first. And going back to what you said, I mean, Calgary's kind of, I don't want to use the word irrelevant because they're not irrelevant, but compared to probably the biggest franchise in the NHL next to New York, like obviously they're irrelevant compared to the Leafs. Yeah. And people on social media make a living clowning Kyle Dubas. And you're right. True. He didn't even sign that contract, and giving up a first for that type of player was probably necessary because at that time there was no precedent set where Arizona was collecting bad deals. Like giving up that contract probably would have required a first, and he did what he had to do. And I mean, it obviously worked because the Toronto Maple Leafs were still competitive the year after. Exactly. And I think it's going to work out here too. I don't think this was like a bad deal. He might miss. Maybe this is just, he had to do what he had to do. I just thought that was interesting. And also the Habs are going to have, I think they have 5 firsts over the next 3 drafts or something stupid like that. I'm not a fan of that. Well, I mean, hot take, but not really hot take. I think they made a big mistake this draft. So hopefully they make four other ones for their first round pick. I mean, I won't be complaining. Shane Wright's going to be the best player from this draft, but we can talk about that another day. Well, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting season to follow that debate now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content, and find the link to our full podcast and all our socials in the description down below. Also, don't forget to turn on those notifications to get live updates on new videos that we release.